everybody, to the third episode of your podcast, Guatemala Travel, thanks to Columbus Guatemala Travel. I'm Kathy, and our special guest of honor is Karen Ayala, a great human being. Karen Ayala, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. I feel really honored to be in your show, especially for Columbus, Guatemala travel. Um, I am an archaeologist who graduated or is a graduate. I'm a graduate from San Carlos University based on Guatemala City. And I am also a tour guide, so I can combine both knowledge, the archaeological knowledge, bit of anthropology, and tourism at the same time. Thank you for having me with you.
No, totally to you. Thank you for giving us the time. And actually, thank you for giving us a little background about yourself. Our topic today is traditions in Guatemala. So, what a better way to get into this topic that is so wonderful, that getting to know the archaeological point of view and your general tour guide experience combined. So, why don't we start, Karencita, talking about the Mayan roots? What's the, I don't know, the origin of the word? What's the meaning of the word Maya?
Okay, so thank you for talking about the Maya. We call them Mayas today since the Spanish conquest, we can say. But if we go back in history, Maya didn't have a general name per se that could identify every single group based on Mesoamerica, but the name started with the Spaniards. If we go back to the writings, the texts of Bernal Diaz del Castillo and other historians, and Mayas obviously were based on different parts of what's now Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, Honduras, El Salvador, and each one of them had their own ethnic group, we can say. They were not named Mayas themselves, and it was until the Spaniards arrived in Mexico and Hernan Cortes just asked the people, they realized that there was people traveling back and forth to what we know now as Yucatan and the northern southern part of Mexico. And they asked them, "Where are you coming? Where are you going to?" And people used to say, "I come from the Mayab. Venimos del Mayab. Mayab. What's the Mayab?" And they started saying, "Mayab might be the people who live there. Might be the name of their group over there, where they go at the jungle into the rainforest. What we call the rainforest in the jungle." And suddenly the word started being spread around the Spanish people, saying that these Tlaxcaltecans or the Mexicas, who are what we call the Aztecs, used to travel to a place where the Mayabs were. But what's Mayab? Mayab means there are theories. There are two different theories. One says that Mayab means the place where it's very flat, 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 flat. Because the lowlands, the rainforest is based basically on flat surface, not too high elevations. And second, the other theory says that Mayab in Yucatecan Maya means where there's no water. No water, that's what it means. And it's because usually people finished, when they do these journeys to the rainforest, they finish their reservoirs of water containing with them that you know about the gourd fruit. Maybe you have seen, we in the area we call them as, we know them as jicaros. So their jicaros or gourd fruit were empty, and they said, well, there's no more water. They finished the water during the journey, and that's what the Spaniards did not understand very well, naming the people Mayas. They are the Mayas. So it can mean the flat place or where there's no water. Not only because their gourd fruit, their canteen finished with the water, but also because in that area, certainly they have cenotes. The cenotes, but those were sacred. I mean, they were not allowed to use it as for showering, to wash things, for wash dishes, for cooking. They had ceremonial purposes. So the water that they could find on surface or they could keep at reservoirs, with the time of the Spaniards, many of their natural resources were like damaged, you know, and there was not abundance of water except for the sea. But how can you do if you go from the center of Yucatan to the ocean? You have to travel too long to find water. So that's why local people knew it as Mayab, where there's no water or water.
Fabulous. What a contrast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that themselves, they never identify as Maya.
No, no, they have their own groups. I mean, Mesoamerica is an area where you find cultural groups. It's more than a geographic area, but cultural too. So they could share almost the same beliefs, deities, elements, ingredients, cooking, uh, but they never said we are the Mayas. It started with the Spaniards. They only knew they were different groups with their own provinces or districts, like territorials. Mhm. They traded, yes, in between them, one group with the other, but no, they didn't name themselves Mayas. Mhm.
Great. Thank you so much for that, my dear Karencita. Now, getting into the tradition aspect, as you mentioned, that they share beliefs, beauties, and this type, of elements of culture. So, based on your experience, what is a tradition?
For me, what I have noticed, I have been on the field for a few years now, and I got to the understanding of tradition is what makes us all. I mean, certainly we are materia, we are matter that physically, but if a group of humans do not have traditions, I difficulty we could be called like humans because that's what molds the society of every human group. Can be from the ancient times, can be from the modern times, but we're all made out of traditions. Probably with the modern times, people can refuse to continue some traditions that their ancestors, great grandparents used to practice. But if it's not because of them, their traditions, we could not be who we are today. So it's in our hands to quit, leaving behind the traditions that identified our community, our town, our city, our pueblo, what we call, and start a new one. But if we would be nice if we have an identification, not only as persons, but also with the community that raised us. Because when we are children, we barely cannot decide on our own to change a religion or to start a new tradition. We live and we grew up with our parents, grandparents, family who teach us all the traditions of the family. And if it's not because of that, who are we? So for me, it what molds all societies.
I agree.
Mhm.
And as you just mentioned, it's like exponential, right? Your family, and then the rest of the traditions that you learn with friends and etc.
Mhm.
So
Right.
the in this context, did traditions determine the power of the Maya civilization?
Yes, yes, they did a lot. It's like if I would decided to study like cultural anthropology, that would be even more intense on me. So usually archaeology and archaeologists are anthropologists first and then archaeology because we have to observe and absorb, all the traditions of the communities that we spend the time with or that we visit. In the case of Guatemala, we can say there are multiple ethnic groups. Our 21 indigenous groups. When I mention indigenous, I'm saying that they are native from the area. And what makes them native from the area are the traditions. The traditions that they could follow from generation to generation. And for example, what made the Mayas, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, the Mosquitos, the Teotihuacans, and all the groups you can see around the world are the traditions. People travels to visit and to witness themselves those traditions. That wouldn't make sense if traveling, let's say, from Russia to Chichicastenango, if they do the same, makes no sense. So the point of traveling over here is to see that to see that the diversification, or how diversified is the people in the country or in the place where you're traveling. So that was one of the most, if not the most important thing that empowered the Mayan people as other groups, you know. Mhm.
So, because we are talking about different ethnic groups,
Mhm.
and I love the idea of switching a little bit from, and let's say imposter work, just to say it, but switching it to native or indigenous. So
Mhm.
let's say that these indigenous ethnic groups that we are discussing about, when they got colonized, do you believe that our traditions make it easier or harder? How that traditions affected?
Yeah. Okay. So if we go back to times, the ancient times, the Mayan people who lived in the territory, let's say on the 800s, 900s AD, were different, did kind of different traditions. The descendants followed many of those traditions BC, AD, but when the Spaniards arrived, the Mayas also, or do I say Maya, just like a generic word, the Mayas practice, the local groups today practice their religion, their traditions, we can say created by them, or adding new things to the ones they had from their background, from their origins. So I think that the practices of the tradition, yes and no. Because some of their traditions were so seen as deemed that evil by the Spaniards. Like, for example, when the Spaniards arrived to the site of Ichinche, for instance, just an example, and lots of people started dying from diseases such as chickenpox, smallpox, TB, sexual transmission diseases, and many others, Mayan people thought that the gods were mad at them. In their spirituality, in their spiritual traditions, they used to not sacrifice every day, not doing human sacrifice every day and every month or certain dates. No, they used to sacrifice human when it was extremely, extremely necessary. But they saw hundreds of people died every day. And they thought, well, my gods might be mad at us. They might be angry with us. We should do something. And the best thing, the best way we could please them is to sacrifice someone of us, some person. When Spaniards saw that, they were so shocked, because they said, "Well, these people is just killing because they believe in those evil gods, they believe in those that might be of the demon. And we need to bring them evangelization. We need to bring the gospel. We need to spread the word of Christianity. We need a religious order, such as monks, nuns, after." And they said, well, these people need the blessing of God because they are killing too many people, uh, just sacrificing to the gods. So these spiritual tradition and their funerary traditions opened the channel, we can say. They opened like the gate for a foreign religion to income the country because the Spaniards thought it was evil. So that's one of the traditions that I can say, yes, it could contribute to the um, conquest of the country. But on the other hand, there are traditions such as cooking. The ball game is so crucial for the Maya since 1,000 years BC, and for the Olmecs 1,500 years BC. That was crucial. They solved conflicts. They solved many things through a ball game. And that is one of the traditions that still continues being practiced in some part of Mexico, but not necessarily contributed to the conquest of a country. Then we have things like the constructive traditions. That was not at all contributing to a conquest. I think that spirituality or spiritual traditions, what we can call religion, was like what most intervened with the conquering of the country. Obviously, we know the reasons of the Spanish after the gold and silver and all the natural resources of our area. But evangelization and this syncretism between Maya and Catholic religions come from the local Maya beliefs in that by sacrificing a precious thing such as life, human life, they would be pleasing the gods and giving back something to the gods for them to bless them with rain, with a good harvest of corn and other products. We are predominantly forestal, but also agriculture was highly practiced back in the post-classic time. So giving back something to the gods was something to retribute to them everything they have had from them, like food, agriculture, rain, land, water, fish, and different things. So there are many traditions that nowadays still are practiced, we can say, from this post-classic time, which was when the Spaniards arrived, 1524, earlier to Mexico. Um, and I don't think they contributed because we still remain and keep these traditions, such as eating tamales, drinking atole, the ball game, the constructive style, Um, we can say the funerary traditions, not the same, but it was a spiritual one that contributed, and the ambition of the Spaniards.
Fabulous. I believe that we have additional to the principal question, we have covered another kind of doubt that we wanted to solve. That it's what was the strongest traditions during the colonization or before it, and I believe totally that spirituality for sure was the strongest. So in terms of um, you just mentioned some of the practices are still nowadays as traditions, for example, the tamal or atole. So for those that have never heard atole is a hot beverage or a hot drink uh, made of corn or any other, in this case, basically is corn. And so based on this, that we are still practicing these traditions. Do you believe that the Maya disappeared? Is this
No,
true?
no, no, they did not. As archaeologists or social scientists, we can say, no, the Mayas did not disappear. There was just we go back 800, 900 years AD. Many groups were living, abandoning their sites or city states, such as Tikal, for example, yeah, Tikal or Nakum or other sites we have in the country on the rainforest. And instead of a lot of people believe that aliens, abducted them. But the people just abandoned, the city suffered an abandonment after there was not enough rain, droughts, diseases, no more fertile land. One, because of overpopulation, probably. And second one, because there was a kind of what we're suffering nowadays, a climate change. And people say, well, there's no more life in this place. My king is not worshiping enough to the gods for us to have food, for us to be blessed with rain. So we don't have anything else to do here. There are wars between Tikal and Calakmul from Belize, Mexico, sorry, or between Tikal and other side, or this my town in conflict with other. They are fighting, they are not providing us food and water and everything we need. So I'm living with my family. Some of them, if we talk about Guatemala, they left from the center of Petén, the north of the country, up to the Yucatan area. But it's known in some of those towns, such as Chichen Itza, started just after the abandonment of Tikal, for instance. So that can be a theory that people from the center of from this center north of Guatemala left to the northern part of Yucatan, Quintana Roo, Campeche, is the same people. Others migrated south to the south, leaving. I'm just giving as a reference Tikal, because there are hundreds of archaeological sites there, and they registered a collapse during on the same time frame. So many of them left that area, moving to the highlands of Guatemala, Chiapas, Honduras, and starting like a new life. Of course, living a new life allows you to change your language at the same time. There was diversification of the language. You found new trees, new wildlife, and you go as human always trying to find a name for everything. So the Mayan Quiches, Mayan Cachiqueles, Mayan Sutujiles, Mams, and all the different groups we have in our country, um, are descendants of them. Probably not 100%, and I say always this, not 100%, because by this time, when all this social, we can call economic change there was happening, also Mexican groups arrived, and Mayans went to Mexico. There was a very strong and intense interaction since they were dynamic people, like just like today. They were not the one who was warrior and the other just putting the hand. No, they've been always as dynamic as we are in our society. And so there was a lot of, how can I say, intermarriage, we can say, between Toltecs and Quiches. Tlaxcaltecans, when the Spaniards arrived, with Cachiqueles. So the people, the Maya people we have nowadays, yes, they descend from the Mayas and they got mixed with other groups. So they are still here, and the traditions that they follow, they practice nowadays, can be verified in archaeological remains, such as vessels, musical instruments, in murals or frescoes on, in the structural walls, on the pyramids, as people call. We don't call it pyramids, but in the pyramids we can call it like that. So Mayas are still here with a modern life, we can say, wearing the same traditional outfit or regional outfit, eating the same food with additions, but still, no, they did not disappear for sure. Our descendants only.
I love your face expression.
Thank you very much.
Releasing the truth. Thank you for sharing the light.
Thank you.
Um, are there any ancient millenary tradition that nowadays you can definitely say, like, as you mentioned, um, we can find traditions nowadays that are being practiced in that dated? What's like the latest will be? No, the earliest date of this type of traditions? Like just a reference, like
Like the
a
oldest, we
date.
can say, like the oldest tradition registered. Yeah. Well, one of them is weaving. The way the women weave their textiles on a backstrap loom, hand woven.
Uh-huh.
Wow, there are archaeological registers to back to what we call pre-classic time. The pre-classic time we're talking about 800s, 600s BC. You know, and during those dates, I don't know if it's noisy now. May I stop or not? I don't know.
No, yeah, please continue. I'm
Continue.
here just paying attention.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. So for me, the weaving tradition using natural dyes, the way they place your backstrap, the loom, the pre-Columbian loom has been found in artifacts that date back to 600s, 800s BC. And also the instruments that are part of, like, for example, spindling the threads,
Uh-huh.
have been found in several archaeological sites. We call them malacates and are still used. You that you know about tourism, there is this community of San Juan La Laguna, Lake Atitlan. They have rescued a lot of their weaving traditions using like exactly the same instruments as we can see back in codes, registers, vessels, archaeological artifacts, figurines made out of clay or stone are just the same thing. For me, weaving, cooking always, such as the tamales. So I do a lot of reference to tamales because before the tortilla, the rounded tortilla, which was brought by Spaniards, that Spanish tortilla was introduced, but people started making it by hand. Before that, the people did not eat tortilla; they ate tamales, and tamales of many different kinds, different flavors, made out of corn, basically, based on corn. Atole, as you were mentioning, also are the two most ancient meals that we have nowadays. Still, we love it, and still we consume. And the way of preparation is the same with firewood, big clay pots using this banana leaf. We call it banana, but it's not actually banana. It's related to the banana leaf, corn husk, tamalitos, and those two are the two most ancient, I think. Some of
I
the
love it.
yeah, and weaving. Hmm.
Fantastic. Thank you, Karencita. It's this is what I love talking to an archaeologist. Banana, as we call it, but it's not the right word.
I'm sorry. I
No
think that
problem.
belongs to the
Thank you
Musasia,
for that.
Musasia scientific thing. So there are many, like many different type of leaf, like the sivaque is another Musasia. They leaf like the shape of a banana. And we say banana, but it's actually known as masham. In the tradition is masham, the mashan leaf, which doesn't produce bananas or plantains, doesn't produce any fruit, but is the same shape and is very accurate and natural for wrapping the tamales. The mashan, this mashan.
Awesome.
Mhm.
And I also heard that this leaf like provides a smoky flavor.
Yes, exactly. So it's not the same, We know that there are compatriot people living in the United States. They make their tamales since it's not so now it's easier. But it was not easy 15, 20 years ago to find mashan leaves. So people use this aluminum foil to wrap the tamales, and that's the way they used to sell them or eat them as an alternative. But it's because even in such a first world country like the United States or Canada, people still feel this identification going back to traditions. They don't leave the traditions behind, and they just miss that. Also, instruments is another tradition. I have seen. I don't know you, Kathy. I'm sure you have seen that people from the town of Comalapa, they perform traditional instruments such as ocarina, flutes, whistles, shells, drums, total shells that are part of this very ancient tradition and maybe can go back to 1,000 years BC. And are the same instruments we find in archaeological sites, still performing 21st
It's
century. So
fascinating.
it's still
And that brings us to the next, which is promoting or keeping alive our traditions. Makes any difference?
like makes any difference, like promoting or keeping traditions alive. Of course, that makes a lot of difference. As I said at the beginning, traditions are what makes a society what it is, a group of human group, what they are today. And yes, it makes a difference because it's not the same tradition or practicing traditions that Mayas of Guatemala have than if we compare with the descendants of Aztecs people, in Mexico, or to the Mosquitos in Honduras. We certainly live on a longitude, on Earth, that many of the products are produced the same way. I mean, we have beans, the triada or triad fruit, corn, beans, and squash or pumpkins. We all have the same, but the way how to prepare of preparation, the ingredients, how they make them will change. It's not the same the person who lives in Palin, Pocomchi, in the small town of Guatemala near the Pacific coast, Palin. The way of weaving is different. I mean, they have a backstroke loom, but the way they display all the threads is different than people from Santa Eulalia or other Mayan group who makes like narrower canvases for their textiles. Um, the way how they eat, the way how they dance, the music is a bit different from one town to another. So that makes a big difference between one and the other. So if you would like to come to Guatemala, I know, 1 week, 10 days, 14 days, it's nice. But of course, being such a small country, you will need to stay a year to notice and learn and visit, and so for you to identify by comparing when you travel to all different towns of the country, what's the difference here, what's the difference there, to prepare alcoholic drinks, ancient alcoholic drinks, such as kusha in the highlands or boj in Alta Verapaz, are different techniques, different ingredients, and still go around. Some identified Quechua people, and others identified Cachiquel people or Quiches or other groups. So yeah, that makes a big difference between one ethnic group and another.
Fantastic. Karencita, based on all this, do you have in mind any tradition that you would like to start or
For
inspired?
me beginning, my that's such a sketchy question because I would love to start many traditions, but maybe one that I am. And I don't know if it's a tradition can become maybe will be a habit first and then become a tradition. And mine goes connected with sustainability. Since I am pro nature, pro protection of nature and environment, I would like to start the tradition. And I know for some people will be some that's not a tradition. Well, it's normal. But in Guatemala, this is not normal. And it's classifying the solid remains, like what we call trash, just classify them. And that should become a tradition for Guatemalans in general, for taking care of our rivers, of our natural resources, of our parks to avoid pollution. I would start something like I know it's not related to archaeology, but I think can contribute more than archaeology if we all as Guatemalans start classifying and reusing, the clothing, the rests, solid rests that we just discard simply like that in Guatemala, reducing plastic, no more production of plastic. If that can go to companies who package everything, who bottle the water in one use plastic bottles, that could be something really helpful for them, even for their descendants. You know, Mine is related to environment sustainability. That and many other traditions.
We will definitely start with that.
Yeah, and maybe it's not about related to Mayas or archaeologists, but it's related to something for everyone's well-being.
Well, at the end, that's what the traditions are, right? Like the creation of a practice that solves a necessity. And
Mhm.
I totally share the idea with you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
We
Other
will
thing,
improve it.
part of this is the fashion. Now it's called slow fashion. For ethnic groups of Mesoamerica, slow fashion has never been a word, but it has been a tradition too. I mean,
Correct.
Mayans they weave their clothes not for wearing it for the wedding, for one
The season.
a party, or for I don't know for the harvest day. No, you can have a huipil or pot. That's the Mayan word pot. You can wear a pot for 100 years because you make that one piece. That one piece will be used by you, for your daughter, for your granddaughter, for your great granddaughter, and that can stay in the family. It's a piece of cloth that they make them so well with the idea of having one peaceful generations to last as much as it can, not like today. Fast fashion, I'm against fast fashion. I'm not a fashionista. And if I wear one piece of clothes, I think will be enough. It has to be good for me to use it in multiple times. And maybe I can heritage to someone else. So I think the slow fashion too, or slow fashion is very important as tradition.
Thank you so much, Karencita. And I just call you Karencita in Spanish. We use a lot of, special words with a lot of emotions. So, Karencita, I really, really appreciate your time, your thoughts, your emotions, your beliefs to be shared in this podcast. And well, we are just about to finish. I don't know if you want to add something to conclude?
Well, thank you. I just would like to, I don't know who's going to watch this video, honestly. But for me, I'm of the persons that I believe a lot, as the topic is tradition, in tradition. So I encourage my young people, different ethnic groups of Guatemala to just keep going on with their traditions. Do not give up. Because the new generation, sometimes they want to stop speaking the local language. They will love to stop dressing the way their community dresses like traditionally. I mean, you can be a professional, you can go to school, you can go to university, you can have PhD, you can have masters, but if you lose the essence of your person or the essence that identify your society, your community, I think that all those studies will not be worth it
Worthless.
because you are the representative, of your family, of your community, and proudly you should show who you are. Doesn't matter if you wear kites, kites is a type of shoe like sandal type made out of leather. It doesn't matter if it's full of colors and in the country where you move to live, they don't dress like that. For me, that doesn't mind. For me, it's like carrying proudly who you are and your people's identity. So I encourage to follow all these traditions all the time and teach to the next generations to keep it up. Otherwise, Guatemala, if we lose all these traditions, will be just another country, And we travel for seeing those different ways of living, for learning, out of judgments and all of that. For me, traditions is what makes a society. Mhm.
Wonderful. We are in the same page. And that's actually why we invited you today, because we know we share the passion of sharing culture, history, art, and traditions essentially are part of our identity. And that's in essence what we want, for people to fall in love with our identity,
Mhm.
respect it, and as much as we can, inspired new generations to keep it alive.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you, Karencita. It's been an honor.
Thank you.
And for everybody, we really hope you are using these tools in the best way. So you are, when traveling, you are getting experiences that are truly significant, and your footprint while traveling, it's going to be positive,
Mhm.
both sides.
Well,
So thank you, everybody.
thank you
Thanks
for
to you
inviting
again.
me too. Thank you for inviting me. I feel really honored to be part of your podcast, and I hope more people can watch it because it's so worth it. Traveling with Columbus, Guatemala travel, since it's all authentic. Thank you for inviting me. Mhm.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time, and stay tuned. Our focus is to keep you always fresh and bring you more interesting things to discover and discuss. Stay safe. Bye, Karen.
Bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.